Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another video. I think it's time that we wrap up the Sword Art Online Marathon. In case you guys missed my previous video that I posted on the channel yesterday, there is a slight change. I am not going to be seeing Aria of a Starless Night tomorrow due to the fact that I've now found a date and time where the movie is going to be showing in dub, because I prefer to see the movie in dub, even though I have no problem with subtitles, but dub is my preference. You can badger me all you want in the comments below. I don't care. That's just how I feel. So the Aria of a Starless Night first reaction video will be on December 8th. That is when I'm going to be seeing it. So that way you guys know. I do apologize for that, but circumstances, and also with the fact that after tomorrow I have to go back to work, and I am going to be working a lot. And what's good about seeing it next week is that after I see the movie, I know I can sleep in the next day because I won't have work. Because I'm going to be working 5 days in a row, which is going to be, it's going to be intense, but this is just how it's going to go. So I apologize. But now let's get into the topic of today's video. We are now on part 4 of the Alicization arc and the final part in the War of Underworld story arc as well. We are wrapping up the Alicization arc. And, you know, I know Aria of a Starless Night will be the end of this marathon, but in terms of, like, where we start and how it's going, this is pretty much kind of like our end point until I, you know, get to the movie. And with this one, I will be giving a overall grade on the entirety of the Alicization arc and whatnot. So let's begin. I'm going to try and stay clear of spoilers. But there are some that I might get into just to kind of emphasize what this whole last half of the story is about and whatnot. So be warned, but I promise it won't be too drastic. As we learned at the end of the first part, Visago now knows that Asuna is in the game and that Kirito is probably somewhere in the game too. And now he's on a hunt to go find them and just destroy everybody in its path. Alice has been taken by Gabriel, and Broccoli is going to save her, and Asuna is now leading the soldiers and residents of the underworld in this long battle, and Sinon has officially joined the fight, as well as Lifa. Lifa now comes along, and all sorts of friends from the series start to come into the underworld to help out Asuna, because I believe his name is Critter, has sent out a open beta where everybody around the world can join in this great war, but they don't know who the real enemy is, and the fighting is getting a lot more intense. It's very brutal when you think about it, because this starts to go into play with people who don't listen to reason and don't understand what's actually going on here, because they're being manipulated by Visago, who we now know. Well, they showed this before, and they've kind of teased it a little bit in the first season of Sword Art Online, is that he is one of the last surviving members of Laughing Coffin, the leader of Laughing Coffin, whose nickname is Poe or Pooh, however you wanna. I think it's Poe because Pooh is 2 O's, but that name actually means Prince of Hell. And there is a great episode in this final half that shows a little bit of his backstory, which they delve into in the books, and I think they did a really good job showing it in the anime. But the big goal still stands, is getting Kirito to wake up. That is our main plot throughout this final section of the Alicization story. And honestly, nonstop enjoyment from beginning to end. This, just kind of like with the last part, we're in all battle territory. There's really not a lot of room to breathe, because every episode is getting into some sort of big fight. And the final fight for this story arc is absolutely amazing. It's a visual spectacle. It's emotional. And it was just, what's cool about it is that we don't just get that final battle. We also get another final battle that takes place before that. That is another truly exciting thing to see. But the very final one is more spectacle of how they do it. And then the overall ending of the Alicization story. It wraps up everything pretty nicely, but there's still a couple of loose ends that, you know, because again, the story is technically not done. There are still some questions that need to be answered. There's a lot more going on. And kind of like how I said in previous videos, the author is currently writing what I believe is to be the final story arc in the series. So of course there's still things to go. And at the very end of the last episode, there is a small epilogue that pretty much tells you that Kirito and his friends will return in some way, shape, or form to compete in the, well, not necessarily compete, but fight in the final battle called the Interintelligence War. But that's a topic for another day, and that's probably what's going to be leading into this next big story arc, which I'm actually reading right now. I finished the first book in that new story arc. I haven't started the second one yet, but I plan to really soon. Okay, another thing that this final section brings, we had a couple of, well, yeah, there's a couple little hits and bits of new music in there. They bring some old music back for some touching moments, which was really well used. But one thing that really makes this second half more spectacular is how we dive more deeper into these character relationships. You know, with Asuna, with Kirito. And there are some great moments where all those feels from previous seasons come back, where we get to learn some more about these characters, what they're struggling with. And I mean that in terms of Kirito, because there's a great episode that truly, they don't really show it. They hint at it in the previous seasons and story arcs, how his time from SAO and what he had to do to survive really affects him. It's a powerful moment, and it's an emotional one. But that just makes the whole story much more grander, more satisfying when, you know, things start to progress more and more characters are given time to shine and all that stuff. Again, don't want to go into too many spoilers, but that's essentially what it is. This was a great finale to a great long story arc. Now, let's talk about Alicization as a whole, not just from what I've talked about in this video. Now let's talk about everything I've talked about. The previous 3 parts, let's combine them into one and go over the entire Alicization story arc, and I'm going to review it based on that. Now, when we begin the Alicization arc, it takes some time to really speed everything up. I have to take that into a factor if I'm going to give this a grade. There is a little bit of a steady wait until we get to that second half, where things really just keep on going forward and they don't stop. And we really get to see more action, more character moments, more character building. And that's what really skyrockets this to the top. But also a great introduction to some brand new characters that when they were first introduced had already become so popular by fans that fans are demanding that more of them come back in some way, which I think is great. And in terms of what I've heard this story arc has done for the community, is how a lot of people who really didn't like the second season of the anime, the Alicization arc really brought those fans back and are excited to see what comes next. But for me, I personally have loved all of it. I don't think anyone is terrible. If I have issues with something, I'll bring it out. But with all the memories I have, not just with the story arc, but with the series as a whole, still to this day makes my favorite anime of all time. Personally, for me, do I really think it's the greatest in the world? There are animes that are way better than that, but Sword Art Online will always have a special place in my heart, and that's why I still think it's number one to me. But I know from a standpoint of other fans, there are animes out there that do a way better job, but I'm still a firm believer in what Sword Art Online does. And now to give the Alicization arc a grade. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm actually going to give it an A-. I was going to go with a B+, but I think for what happens after that slow build-up, it just doesn't stop and it never goes back down. And that's why I think that the A- is more appropriate, because once it goes, and it just keeps on getting better and better with some great storytelling and all that stuff that I just mentioned. It's an absolute great thrill ride. And if you guys haven't seen the Alicization arc, all of it is on Hulu, I think Crunchyroll, Funimation. I think the first half of the Alicization arc is on Netflix that you can watch. Or if you want to shell out some money, you can buy the Blu-rays. The Blu-rays for Sword Art Online are kind of expensive, but if you're a diehard fan and you like the little bonus features and love collecting anime as much as I do, then I would definitely say pick it up, because it's certainly worth your time and a great enjoyment. And it's actually been a really fun experience for me going back and talking about all these different story arcs. Now, I didn't actually watch all of the episodes before I did a review. I actually just talked about it on the spot. Even though if I had more time and things weren't so crazy with work, I would actually have watched the story arc again, then come back and talk about it then. But because of timing and work issues, I couldn't do that. But even just talking about it, I remember every little thing that happens in all the episodes, and just the enjoyment, I can't talk, the enjoyment that I felt when I watched each and every one of these story arcs and what it showed. And I love it. It's very relatable with its characters. The action is intense and great. I love the concept of the show, how these characters go from the real world into a video game. And, they're not unstoppable like they're human beings, and we understand where they're coming from, because the show is very relatable to how it depicts these characters, and I love that with what this series does. And I'm not even that upset when they're not even in the video game, because I like seeing what they do in real life, and that's always great to see. And this has been really fun. I've been wanting to talk about Sword Art Online for a long time, but I've never really found the time to do that. I do have another video on my channel where I really talk about how I discovered Sword Art Online and everything about that, with how for my friend, it was the first anime she mentioned to me, and that just took off my anime craze, and now I'm watching so much, and I really love it. There's so much going on, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Now to kind of, wrap up the video, what do I think about Sword Art Online in the future? How do I feel with where they're going? Well, I can honestly say, after reading the first book in the supposed final story arc, which is actually titled Unital Ring, it's a very slow start. Nothing really happens in that first book until the very end. Like, legitimately, nothing happens until the very end of that first book. So it was a little bit of a drag, but I'm hoping that within that story arc, we tend to see some more things with certain characters. Like, I'm actually really hoping that we get to go a little bit more into the backstory of a character that I don't want to say, because spoilers for the final part of the Alicization arc. But that's something I do want to see. One thing is, too, whenever they do finish up the series in general, I want the ending to be satisfying. I want it to end on a good note, no loose ends, and just have everything wrapped up very nice. Give me one final great story, and I can be happy with where we go. And even if the Alicization didn't have those loose ends and it just ended the way it did, I'd probably be happy. I think that it was good with how they fixed up on everything, but there's still some loose ends at the ending of that final episode, so it has to continue. It's not over yet, but I'm hoping that when it does, it's satisfying to fans. And I've come across shows and series that start really good and then they end just really badly. Game of Thrones, I'm looking at you. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping. But how do I feel about these new progressive movies? Because it has been announced that Aria of a Starless Night will be getting a sequel movie. I can't pronounce the name, and I forgot the name anyway, but it's already been confirmed to get another movie, so it looks like they're turning some of these progressive books into movies. How do I feel about that? I mean, to build up the time until the final story arc is complete within the books, I'm like, okay, bring on these new movies. I'll go and see them. It's Sword Art Online, and I'm willing to pass the time by seeing those movies and reading this new story arc. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm hoping it doesn't take too long, because after finishing the Alicization arc, as a diehard fan, I was like, oh man, I can't wait till we get into that next season. But it's like, oh, he hasn't finished writing the books yet, and now we're getting these movies. It'll be an interesting road, but I'm excited to see where it goes for the series, and I do hope that the final story arc just is fantastic. It was very slow in that first book, so But I'm hoping now that I have the second one, and the second one just kind of released here in the US, I'm hoping that it's actually a step up and we start to get more in tune of what exactly is going on. But again, if he's going to make more books about it, then, he's got to escalate it. But I'm excited to see where it goes. And with that being said, folks, the next time I see you, we will be talking about the brand new Sword Art Online movie, Aria of a Starless Night. I'm excited to see it. I can't wait to see it. I do have some mixed feelings about the progressive series, about how I really wish they would just focus on the final story arc, but again, it's not fully written yet. But I'm curious to see how I feel with Aria of a Starless Night. It doesn't mean like I'm not necessarily worried, but for me, I'm kind of in the state of mind like we're going back to the beginning with this brand new movie. And while I do love the Aincrad arc, I'd prefer to just keep on going into the future. But I can't say anything until I actually see the movie. But I am looking forward to it. And I'll just say this one more time. I will not be seeing the movie tomorrow. There will be no first reaction video tomorrow. My first reaction video for Aria of a Starless Night will be next Wednesday. That's that. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this Sword Art Online marathon. It will probably be concluding next week, but the road leading up to the movie has been fun. I love talking about it, and there's so much more we can talk about in the future. I'll see you guys next time.